Hello, how you guys? Good evening. How you guys doing? Hope you're doing well. I hope you have a good evening. Well, I'm about to play this video. I don't want to waste your time here, and I'm going to show you what President Trump did at the UN meeting, at the United Nations meeting, and this is going to play into why Americans may not be welcome in other countries. Starts with your leadership, and look what he says to these people.
And that shape doesn't just go straight up. That shape is amorphous when it comes to the atmosphere. And if we had the most clean air, and I think we do, we have very clean air. We have the cleanest air we've had in many, many years. But the problem is that other countries, like China, which has air that's a little bit rough, it blows. And no matter what you're doing down here, the air up here tends to get very dirty because it comes in from other countries where their air isn't so clean. And the environmentalists refuse to acknowledge that. And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
Delivered from anybody less malicious and much more competent, that would be a really funny, kind of heartwarming icebreaker line. But as you might expect, Donald Trump off the teleprompter is even more unhinged than Donald Trump on the teleprompter, and his speech in front of the United States General Assembly was unhinged and dishonest and spectacularly embarrassing, not just for Trump, but also the United States on the global stage, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Ron Filipkowski, who's the editor-in-chief of Midas Touch, put it best. We're going to play some clips, but he's going to set the stage here. Summary of Trump's speech to the UN today. Number 1, your countries all suck. Number 2, none of you know what you're doing. Number 3, the US is better at everything. Number 4, all because of me, Donald Trump. Number 5, I'm right about everything, says Donald Trump. Number 6, you should listen to me, Trump, and do what I, Trump, say. And number 7, give me, Trump, lots of awards. Lots of awards. Yeah. So, just brace yourselves, folks. We've got multiple clips. Here we go. Starting with this one right here.
This is indeed the golden age of America. We are rapidly reversing the economic calamity we inherited from the previous administration, including ruinous price increases and record-setting inflation. Inflation like we've never had before. Under my leadership, energy costs are down, gasoline prices are down, grocery prices are down, mortgage rates are down, and inflation has been defeated.
Chevy makes America's most dependable trucks.
No.
Like other people at the American Renaissance Conference, Taylor argues for a separation of the races, where whites don't have to be reminded of slavery, segregation, or the fact that racism still exists. If you want that white-only land, why don't you go find somewhere else to live?
What do you mean, find someplace else?
Where do you want the people of color to go?
Welcome to Racist of the Week. My name is Reese Waters. This is where we expose the stupidity and hypocrisy of discrimination in hopes we can build a more perfect union. And also laugh. As usual, I would like to thank today's sponsor, Racism. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the page, and definitely leave me any possible suggestions for nominees in the comments. You can email me at reese@reesewaters.com. And shout out to all of our subscribers and members here on the channel. Well, today, we're back in Tennessee. Yeah, again. I don't know why these white supremacists love Tennessee. First, it was the Nacho March in Nashville.
The khaki-loving extremist group known for plastering clustering communities, including the Nashville area, with their white supremacist slogans.
Then there was the Christian nationalists trying to take over Jackson County.
I'm not going to debate the meaning of America with those that seek its destruction.
The two Christian nationalists denounced the efforts of civil rights leader Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement in general, with Ingalls saying, "You cannot have both MLK and Heritage America," and Isker declaring, "We should turn civil rights back to the states." They celebrate images of whites-only diners in the 50s, with Ingalls proclaiming the 1960s ruined everything, and they mock historical incidents like the kidnapping of 14-year-old Emmett Till.
Well, they back again.
Fronting hate, our exclusive News Channel 5 investigation continues, focusing this time on how Tennessee has become home for what may be the most influential white supremacist gathering in the country.
Every year, a state park right here in Middle Tennessee hosts the so-called American Renaissance Conference.
Today's nominee, the American Renaissance Conference.
Drawing 200 to 300 people from around the country.
Can you call it a conference when it's 200 to 300 people? Huh? That's more like a meeting. Yeah, that's more like a meeting.
Some of them, the biggest names in the world of hate.
They got Charleston White, Chris Collinsworth, Joe Buck.
But instead of white robes and hoods, these attendees come in coat and tie.
I like the white robes and hoods better, if I'm being honest. I mean, it was intimidating at the time, but it's also quite a warning.
Here at Montgomery Bell State Park, the tranquility of a fall afternoon was interrupted by the sounds of protest.
No Nazis! No KKK! No fascist USA!
By a small group of anti-fascists upset over the return of the white supremacist American Renaissance Conference.
Now, why does Antifa dress like that? You know, because I feel like most of us are anti-fascists. So if anybody's just wearing a coat and tie, it should be the anti-fascists.
An annual event that's been held here at the Parks Lodge and Conference Center since 2012.
We're out here to make a statement. Don't ever come back here again. No! We are not welcome here. Go here for conference.
Trying to avoid a clash that erupted 1 year between the two sides, park rangers set up a security perimeter, confining the Antifa protesters to the backside of the lodge, separated from the conference by a locked gate.
It's at this point I would just like to highlight the reality of checking into a hate conference. Yeah, I'm here for the white hate conference. Yeah. Waters. Okay. I was told that I could pick up my badge and lanyard right here.
So, if the results of this, you have this coming up. You got something that's coming up that, as Americans, why you're not liked. We're, as a country, some people that come from this country, because of stuff like that. And I'm going to show you, I just saw a video, this guy pointed out, because this is what's in America, and our president saying something like that, backed up by comments like this. This is the reason why that they don't like us in America. This is the reason why we in the bondage that we in.
Style and substance in the GMC's.
The blue passport was once a universal pass, but now more than 70% of Americans feel they are treated differently, even with hostility, abroad. The harsh reality is that the world is turning its back on Americans. A report pointed out that
Did you know that over 70% of American travelers now say they're treated differently abroad, and not in a good way? That number says more than you'd think. They're noticing colder service, awkward questions, and in some cases, outright hostility.
The ugly American returns. World turns cold on US tourist. This wave of global outrage erupted online, with social media becoming a public court where the ugly image of Americans is mercilessly mocked, as this video shows.
From Reddit to TikTok, tourist shaming has become a global pastime, and US travelers are often the stars. Entire threads are dedicated to moments where American visitors come across as loud, oblivious, or entitled.
Absurd stories have become symbols of ignorance about local culture and a lack of basic courtesy.
One story describes an American parent at Stonehenge urging their child to go climb on the big rocks. Another recalled a woman in France asking if a group of medieval reenactors were Syrian refugees. And in a quiet spot in England, believed to be tied to the legend of King Arthur, an American tourist looked around and said, "Where's the goddamn castle?"
The ugly American stereotype has returned, spreading at a rapid pace. And Americans themselves are aware of it. According to a global rescue survey, 7 out of 10 travelers, 72% said that Americans are now viewed more negatively and are less welcome when traveling abroad. It goes beyond a handful of awkward or comical incidents. The real issue is an ingrained attitude, the belief that they are the center of the universe, that every place they visit should operate by American standards. From loudly complaining when vendors don't speak English, to assuming credit cards are accepted in every local market, to demanding traditional dishes be altered to suit personal taste, each small act, once amplified on social media, reinforces the image of a nation that is ignorant and condescending. This outrage is no longer confined to phone screens. It has spilled onto the streets, from protests outside the US Embassy in Mexico City to a growing anti-American sentiment across Europe. American tourists now face a mounting wave of hostility. In Mexico City, demonstrators marched with the slogan, "Gringo, stop stealing our homes." In Spain, weekly protests against over-tourism have become so common that the US Embassy issued a public warning to American citizens. Rejection also stems from cultural disrespect. In Kyoto, authorities had to ban tourists from certain alleys after repeated harassment of geisha. Even more offensive, in Vietnam, an American was spotted visiting a war museum, wearing a t-shirt with a gun image, and the slogan, "Freedom American Style." A Business Insider article captured a bitter personal experience. She pointed us down the worst possible road, and we wondered, did she do it on purpose? The American passport now carries a political burden. US travelers are no longer just tourists. They represent a nation the world is rapidly losing trust in. The numbers don't lie. According to one report, international arrivals to the US dropped by a staggering 18.4% in March, led by a sharp decline from Canada. This erosion of trust is reflected in increasingly strict border rules. A growing list of countries, from Brazil to the United Kingdom, are reinstating visa or entry permit requirements for American citizens. The social fallout is just as severe. In cities like Lisbon, Tulum, and Athens, neighborhoods have been completely Americanized, traditional cafes replaced by Instagram check-in spots, while locals are pushed out of their homes by soaring rents. For them, welcoming tourists is no longer about sharing culture, but about losing their identity. The world is no longer looking the other way. Global hospitality still exists, but it is no longer unconditional. Whether America chooses to listen, that is another story for the future. The world is no longer turning a blind eye. Global hospitality still exists, but now it comes with conditions. It requires American travelers to be mindful, to respect local cultures, and to behave appropriately wherever they go. Whether the US chooses to listen, however, is a story yet to be written. The United States was once likened to a global Disneyland, a dazzling, promising destination. But that image is now cracking, turning into a rundown theme park, where ticket prices have doubled, and half the rides no longer work. Tourism, once a tangible symbol of the American dream, is gradually decaying into a nightmare of sky-high costs. And the ones footing the bill aren't just international travelers. It's ordinary Americans themselves, watching expenses climb everywhere, from grocery stores and restaurants, to their own short weekend getaways. Economic data from key tourism hubs like Las Vegas paints a picture that is both vivid and troubling. These figures reflect not only a weak summer season, but also a worrisome trend that's beginning to take shape.
According to a Friday report from the LVCVA, hotel occupancy dropped to 76% in July. That's about a 7% drop from last year.
This downturn is all the more striking because it's unfolding even during what should have been peak travel season. On a broader scale, southern Nevada as a whole has seen an 11% drop in visitors. The picture is even bleaker elsewhere. San Francisco, a major tourism hub, faced hotel vacancy rates of nearly 40% this past summer, an unthinkable figure not long ago. These aren't just numbers in a financial report. They are signs of a deeper fracture in the service economy. And the most urgent question is no longer why, but rather who is truly paying the price for this decline. The answer doesn't lie with any single entity, but within a tangled chain of economic links, from frontline businesses and their workforce, to the very budget structures of local governments. Pressure on the service industry. The collapse begins at the most basic level. The dining table in Las Vegas, the city that never sleeps. Restaurants are enduring long, quiet nights. Instead of laughter and clinking glasses, polished wooden tables sit idle. Plenty of seats, but far too few diners. The 11% drop in visitors to southern Nevada translates into this reality. In any given restaurant, 1 out of every 10 tables remains perpetually empty. Those on the ground feel the difference most sharply. They see, hear, and sense just how much things have changed compared to years past.
This particular trip, that it seems to be less crowded than normal. And we usually come on Labor Day weekend.
I said something to her about it, that it just doesn't seem that busy for being a holiday weekend.
For the service workforce, the shock is immediate and personal. It hits their income directly. The US wage structure in hospitality, particularly in restaurants and bars, leans heavily on tips. Unlike in many other countries where tipping is a bonus, in America it's a built-in, non-optional part of total pay. The tipped minimum wage in many states is far below the general minimum wage, on the assumption that tips will make up the difference. This model leaves workers highly vulnerable to swings in demand, when customer traffic drops, or when patrons cut back on tipping. The earnings of servers, bartenders, and support staff decline overnight. This is the erosion of the main source of income used to cover basic living expenses such as rent, food, and transportation. Persistent inflation in recent years has reshaped household finances across the US. Essential costs have risen, squeezing disposable income. In that environment, discretionary spending on travel, entertainment, dining out is the first to be slashed. A restaurant meal is no longer a spur-of-the-moment indulgence, but a carefully weighed financial decision. For working class and middle class families, choosing between filling the gas tank to get to work or splurging on dinner out has become a routine dilemma.
So Trump said everything that the commies turn around. There it is, just right there. And do you notice the type of attitude that they're not putting up with us? And we carry the same. We got some people in the second video carry that spirit over in other countries, because some of them 200 conservatives, they probably do travel to other places. And with the entitlement, they probably have an entitlement attitude over there, and over there. But it starts with the leader. It starts, and that's President Trump. And they all come on one accord with him, because they can identify with him because of the arrogance that he carries and stuff. And it's just that it's really reflecting. And this is what the world sees. This is what I was saying in a couple videos. The world seeing this. Now imagine people around the world seeing stuff like this. And head of a spearhead of the president that talks like this. Florida, one of the most highly anticipated places. Watch this.
International travel is way down. People are not coming to the United States. We have a rather large market with the Canadians.
Nobody tells you that living in Florida means you're trapped in your house for half the year. I am suffering. I'm waking up at 4 a.m.
But it's been really good so far. It's very busy. So that's been everywhere that we've gone. I'm really, really positive.
Well, too, for sale signs south of the border now, in what is increasingly becoming a trend amid growing political tensions and economic uncertainty, some Canadian snowbirds are packing up.
Florida politicians just made the most expensive political mistake in state history. They drove away tourists who spent $33,000 each and lost $37 billion in the process. Not from a hurricane, not from a pandemic, but from their own arrogance. This is the story of how politics killed paradise. And if you think this is just about Florida, you're dead wrong. Let me ask you something. If you owned a business and your best customers spent more money than anyone else, came back every single year, and told all their friends to visit too, would you insult them? Would you threaten them? Would you make them feel unwelcome? Of course not. But that's exactly what Florida politicians did to Canadian tourists, and the results have been catastrophic. Here's what most people don't understand about Florida's economy. It's not just about Mickey Mouse and beaches. Canadian tourists are Florida's secret weapon. These aren't your typical vacation goers who show up for a week and leave. We're talking about snowbirds who spend entire winters in Florida, dropping an average of $33,000 per household every season. They buy groceries, eat at restaurants, shop at local stores, and keep entire communities alive during what should be the slow season. But then President Trump started calling Canada the 51st state and slapped them with heavy tariffs. Here's where it gets interesting though. Most Canadians didn't just get mad at Trump, they got mad at America. And guess what? Florida is in America. The result was swift and brutal. An 80% drop in Canadian tourists, according to Congressman Jared Moskowitz. Now, you might think I'm exaggerating, but let me tell you about Richard Clavette. He owns hotels in Hollywood, Florida, and he watched his Canadian customers disappear in real time. Many expressed dissatisfaction with how Trump spoke about their prime minister, leading them to boycott the US, he explained. His Canadian guests dropped by 50% compared to the previous winter. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These were real people with real money who decided Florida was no longer worth their vacation dollars. But here's where this story goes, from bad to absolutely insane. While Canadian tourists were already staying away, Florida politicians looked at this disaster and said, you know what? Let's make it worse. They proposed something so shocking that even I had trouble believing it was real when I first researched this story. The Florida House of Representatives.
What if the lottery was on your phone? With real tickets, real winners.
Representatives passed a bill to eliminate all 62 tourist development councils in the state. Now, if you don't know what these are, let me explain. Tourist development councils are like Florida's sales team for tourism. They use hotel taxes to market Florida to visitors around the world, fund beach restoration, attract sports events, and basically do everything that makes people want to visit Florida. Getting rid of them would be like McDonald's firing everyone in their marketing department and then wondering why nobody knows about their new burgers. It's economic suicide disguised as fiscal responsibility. Are you ready for the numbers? Because they're going to blow your mind. Tourist development councils collect nearly $2 billion every year from hotel taxes. According to an analysis by Florida Politics, eliminating these councils would cause a $37 billion hit to the economy and cost $22.5 billion in wages for Florida workers. Think about that for a moment. Florida politicians were ready to destroy $37 billion of economic activity to give residents a $60 property tax break. That's like burning down your house to save money on your electric bill. The math is so bad, it's almost comical. Except real people's jobs were on the line. Robert Scrobb, executive director of Destinations Florida, called it exactly what it was, an act of economic sabotage. He warned that eliminating tourism promotion would gamble with the livelihoods of more than 2 million Floridians. And we're not talking about wealthy executives here. We're talking about hotel workers, restaurant servers, small business owners, and families who depend on tourists to pay their bills and put food on the table. Now let me ask you another question. Have you ever wondered why some places become tourist destinations while others don't? It's not just about having nice weather or pretty beaches. Hawaii has those. California has those. Dozens of places have those. The difference is marketing. The difference is making people aware of what you have and convincing them to choose you over everywhere else they could go. Florida understood this for decades. That's why they became the tourism powerhouse they are today. But apparently, some politicians forgot this basic principle of business. They thought Florida's reputation would just maintain itself while they scored political points by cutting spending. The timing couldn't have been worse. While Florida politicians were threatening to gut their tourism marketing, the Canadian boycott was already spreading. Canadian car visits to the US plummeted 34% in August 2025, according to Forbes. This wasn't just a Florida problem, but Florida felt it harder than anywhere else because Canadians made up such a huge part of their winter tourism economy. Here's what makes this even more frustrating. Governor Ron DeSantis seemed completely oblivious to the severity of the situation. At the 2025 Florida Governors Conference on Tourism, he announced that Florida welcomed 34.4 million visitors in the second quarter, including only 640,000 Canadians. That Canadian number represented a 20% drop from the previous year, but DeSantis acted like everything was fine. Brian Griffin, the new president and CEO of Visit Florida, tried to put a positive spin on the situation. Florida actually is seeing an increase in visitors from other places, including Brazil, he told reporters. But here's the problem with that logic. Replacing Canadian tourists who spend thousands of dollars and stay for months with visitors from other countries isn't like replacing one light bulb with another. Different tourists have different spending patterns, different length of stays, and different economic impacts. Canadians weren't just tourists. They were seasonal residents who became part of Florida communities. They had favorite restaurants, regular grocery stores, preferred golf courses, and relationships with local businesses. When they left, they didn't just take their money. They took decades of built-up economic relationships. You can see the real impact in places like Fort Myers Beach, where boarded-up shops tell the story of a tourism economy in trouble. In Clearwater, for sale signs are everywhere on properties that used to be full of winter visitors from Canada. These aren't just statistics. They're the visible proof that Florida's tourism economy is hemorrhaging money. Annie Holcomb, a vacation rental business development executive in Panama City, explained why the Tourist Development Council cuts would be so devastating. Florida and each destination compete against other states and destinations for events, conferences, and the attention of travelers who can choose any destination. She said, "You don't stop marketing when you're on top." And she's absolutely right. Tourism is a competitive business. Every sunny destination in the world wants those tourism dollars. Mexico is competing for them. The Caribbean is competing for them. Even other U.S. states are competing for them. The moment Florida stops marketing itself effectively, those destinations are ready to swoop in and capture Florida's market share. The ripple effects go way beyond hotels and restaurants too. Sports tourism brings in millions of dollars through tournaments and events, and it depends on TDC funding. Without these councils, Florida communities lose the ability to attract major sporting events, conventions, and international tourists. As one industry expert put it, if you destroy the TDT, you destroy Florida's ability to compete. What makes this situation even more maddening is that Florida's tourism industry was actually breaking records in some areas. The state welcomed 142.9 million visitors in 2024, a 1.6% increase over 2023. Tourism generated over $150 billion in economic impact and supported 2.1 million jobs. Florida was winning, but politicians were willing to risk all of that success for short-term political gains. The Canadian boycott shows no signs of slowing down either. Data from Tourism Economics revealed that Canadian visitation continues to spiral downward, with visits from Canada down 25.2% year to year, as of August 2025. Many Canadians are choosing to travel to other international destinations instead of the United States. Some are going to Brazil, others to European countries, and many are simply staying home or traveling within Canada. And here's the thing that should terrify every Florida business owner. Trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. Carol Dover, president and CEO of the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, acknowledged that the hospitality industry faces real challenges. Even with new leadership bringing first-hand experience as a hospitality business owner, the best management in the world can't overcome political decisions that systematically drive away customers. The most shocking part of this whole story is how completely preventable it was. Florida didn't have to choose between politics and tourism. Other states managed to attract visitors without alienating entire countries or gutting their marketing budgets. Texas attracts millions of visitors without insulting their neighbors. California brings in international tourists without destroying their promotional infrastructure. But Florida politicians decided that scoring political points was more important than protecting the jobs and livelihoods of more than 2 million people who depend on tourism. They chose.
So, you see what kind of people we have at the top and their mentality of thinking?
What happens if my dad starts trading tomorrow?
How old is your father?
He is 56.
Perfect by the end of September. Also proved fragile. Rising costs from disrupted supply chains or terror.
Hold on. Check this out.
What was once celebrated as a renaissance of U.S. auto manufacturing is now sputtering into crisis. Hyundai, the South Korean powerhouse that transformed Alabama and Georgia into automotive strongholds, finds itself at the mercy of policy whiplash. Immigration raids, tariff walls, and political friction have left once booming plants teetering on the edge. Communities are bleeding, investors are wary, and the bigger question looms: is America pushing away the very automakers it fought to attract? How Hyundai became America's promise and its risk. Hyundai's arrival in the American South was once hailed as a triumph of global partnership. Alabama and Georgia courted the automaker with tax breaks and infrastructure upgrades, and the payoff was huge. Plants buzzed with SUVs, sedans, and eventually EVs, while tens of thousands of jobs fueled local growth. Entire towns flourished as restaurants, suppliers, and housing markets thrived on Hyundai's presence. But behind the success lay vulnerabilities. Modern auto manufacturing is deeply global, and Hyundai's U.S. operations still relied on imported batteries, wiring harnesses, and expertise from Korean technicians critical for EV battery production. This dependence left the company exposed to tariffs, immigration crackdowns, and shifting geopolitical currents. Consumer trust, built on affordability and generous warranties, also proved fragile. Rising costs from disrupted supply chains or tariffs quickly eroded Hyundai's price advantage. In effect, Hyundai's American story reflects globalization itself, celebrated when politics are stable, but precarious when policies turn punitive. And those vulnerabilities came into sharp focus during the shocking raid that stopped Hyundai's momentum in its tracks. The raid that stalled the engine. On September 4th, 2025, the U.S. carried out its largest single-site immigration raid at Hyundai and LG's battery plant site in Elabel, Georgia. Federal agents detained 475 workers, many South Korean specialists essential to final assembly, halting construction overnight and stalling a multi-billion-dollar project that was to anchor Hyundai's U.S. EV future. The disruption was immediate. Commissioning timelines collapsed, suppliers froze shipments, and contractors stopped work. Losing key technicians derailed battery calibration, leaving a state-of-the-art facility silent. Schedules planned years ahead unraveled in days. The political shock ran even deeper. Seoul condemned the raid, noting many detainees held valid visas, and a leaked memo revealed at least one legally documented worker was taken, fueling charges of overreach. South Koreans began questioning America's reliability as an investment partner. Investors across Asia and Europe were rattled. If Washington could jeopardize $12.6 billion overnight, what project was safe? Locally, suppliers, restaurants, and families felt the economic sting. The raid proved how fragile industrial ambition becomes under policy whiplash. Before we dive into tariffs and trade wars, take a second to hit subscribe and ring the bell. That way, you'll stay up to speed on every twist, turn, and shake-up in the auto world, right here at Piston Pundit. Now, let's steer straight into the next challenge Hyundai faces: tariffs and trade policy. Tariffs, policy swings, and the war on imports. Even before the raid, Hyundai was already squeezed by U.S. trade policy. Under Trump's America First framework, Korean automakers faced a 25% tariff on vehicles and parts, while Japanese rivals like Toyota and Honda were taxed at just 15%. That gap carved away Hyundai and Kia's competitive edge. By mid-2025, Hyundai's profits had plunged over 20%. Popular models jumped $3,000 to $6,000 in price, gutting the affordability that defined the brand. Showrooms went quiet, fleet buyers defected, and dealers watched loyalty erode. Hyundai absorbed part of the pain, trimming profit margins from 8% to 6%.
Long term, it pledged that by 2030, 80% of U.S. sales would come from American-built vehicles, anchored by a Georgia expansion to 500,000 units annually. But localization isn't foolproof. Tariffs still hit imported subcomponents, while heavy U.S. investment risks backfiring if policies reverse. Consumers, meanwhile, face fewer affordable choices. Ironically, a policy meant to protect U.S. industry has raised costs for families while destabilizing one of the South's largest foreign investors. And when the automaker struggles at this scale, the ripple effects go far beyond corporate boardrooms. They strike directly at local communities. Bleeding lines, economic fallout across communities. Hyundai's struggles ripple far beyond its balance sheets. In Georgia and Alabama, the automaker wasn't just a company. It was an economic engine. Suppliers clustered nearby, restaurants thrived on worker traffic, and schools prepared students for manufacturing careers. When tariffs tightened and raids hit, that ecosystem began to falter. Dealerships felt it first. Cars sat unsold, financing costs soared, and sales teams struggled to justify higher prices. Workers braced for layoffs or reduced hours, while suppliers who invested in Hyundai tooling faced unpaid invoices or slashed orders. Restaurants and small shops in towns like Ellaville and Montgomery saw tables empty as plant activity slowed. Local governments lost payroll and sales tax revenues, while colleges training EV technicians questioned whether those jobs would materialize. Most damaging was the psychological blow. Communities once convinced foreign automakers meant stability now doubted their durability. So the question became, would Hyundai retreat under pressure or fight back with a counterpunch of its own? Hyundai's counterpunch: retreat, reform, or reinvent. Amid crisis, Hyundai isn't retreating. In September 2025, it pledged a $2.7 billion expansion at its Georgia plant, boosting capacity by 200,000 units and aiming for 500,000 vehicles annually within 3 years. The move signals determination to endure rather than fold. Hyundai is also lobbying for immigration reforms, pushing for a visa track to secure skilled foreign specialists vital to battery and gigafactory operations. Without them, executives warn, U.S. plants will remain vulnerable to disruption. On the product side, Hyundai is hedging. EVs remain central, but hybrids and extended-range electrics provide balance for consumers wary of high costs or range anxiety. A long-awaited mid-size pickup is also part of its U.S. push. Financially, Hyundai trimmed margins but aims to recover by 2027 through scale, automation, and diversified suppliers. Global goals remain ambitious: 60% electrified vehicles by 2030. Still, bold strategies only matter if they can withstand the ultimate test: America's volatile politics and shifting policies. Final lap. Is Hyundai holding steady or slipping away? Hyundai stands at a crossroads. The Georgia raid exposed just how brittle foreign investment can be when policy whiplash takes the wheel. Tariffs, labor shocks, and diplomatic rifts have cornered a company once viewed as untouchable. Yet, instead of folding, Hyundai is doubling down, expanding production, lobbying for reforms, and retooling its product playbook. The real verdict? Hyundai is betting billions on America, but whether that wager pays off depends on more than factories and cars. It hinges on politics, policies, and whether Washington wants to keep its foreign partners in the race or push them off the track. And now, over to you. Do you think Hyundai's expansion is a bold masterstroke or a desperate gamble? Should U.S. policy prioritize protecting domestic automakers, even if it risks alienating foreign investors? And most importantly, would you still choose Hyundai if tariffs keep pushing prices higher? Please share your thoughts and
So, Trump and his administration. Florida is hurting. And he talks to the youth and what he did at the UN. And think that people want to deal with that ego. But you see how the way this America, and then the part about the tourists and we get, and I was thinking about that today. Some people in America do carry that kind of attitude, that I'm entitled attitude, and throw a fit. And them type of people shouldn't even go overseas. They need to stay here. If you can't respect another person's culture, you really need to stay here. Because nobody wants a pompous bully. You know, you have to respect other people. But the reason why I showed the one with Reese video, because look at what the mindset of white supremacy have cost in Tennessee. And different groups of people, and probably Tennessee would have to come through there. There might be South Koreans and other people coming through there. But if Tennessee is going to keep reflecting, you know, and I'm not saying, but if they're going to allow that stuff, because I know a lot of people don't agree with it, but if they're going to allow that, that kind of push people away. America keeps showing who she really is. And if you keep having issues like that, and look what type of and they even hold that group of people who, you know, they think Donald Trump is a rock star, but they don't know. You know, he don't care about the average white person, the poor working white person. He's only care about billionaires. But people would sit down because there are some white people who agree with his philosophy. If it means holding up, and you can see towns all across this country suffering. You have people in different industries suffering. Of all races are suffering. Some are suffering behind these tariffs and all these other strange policies. And the Republicans are doing some, and I shouldn't make it a Republican or a Democrat, but it's the kind of mindset they have. They're bringing it back the good old boy way in the 21st century. I mean, can't just their reality that the global world is changing. And it keeps American youth, college students and high school students to be the next generation of innovators. And then, you know, it's really sad, you know, when Americans have to go overseas and get that kind of reaction because they're entitled and they're arrogant. You can see that in our vice president when he went over to Greenland. You know, them people, he went to the restaurant, they wanted him to get out of Greenland. That's bad. When you got that kind of pompous, arrogant attitude, you know, when him and Trump went up there and talk about and try to make a deal with you know, Europe, with Dutchland, and you got this pompous, you know, people, they get tired of that. And, you know, Greenland's real friends with Canada. And Canada is tired of it. So that's messed up when you mess up your neighbors to the north. And you got the neighbors to the south of you. They getting tired of that mess. The Colombian president all the way up to the certain things with the Mexican presidents getting tired. They get tired of this white nationalist trying to put the agenda. And it's pushing at a global scale and all the way to the White House. And I'm telling you, the Heritage Foundation is going to get everybody messed up. They're going to break this country. While we're holding on to so-called pride, they're breaking people, all of us, from all walks of life. Because they put the infiltrate with that Project 2025. And it's hurting all of us. It's hurting the poor, whether you, all races that's in this country, that don't have a job. But they say they're so smart because you have an arrogant bunch of pompous dudes in suits pushing this. I don't know about you, but it's not looking good for the future. But if you're American, ever leave this country, stay humble. If you go overseas for business and schooling, stay humble. Don't get pompous over there. They're not playing. So that's my suggestion, is that, hey, act like you got some sense. If you don't got act like you can't see another human being, and don't expect them, you on their land. You have to learn their rules, their language, and everything. If you're not willing to be that open, don't travel over there. That's how I feel. Because that's not right. You know, and this want to be one of these people with this pompous behind. Don't be a Donald Trump or J.D. Vance. Other words, don't have that pompous attitude. Because citizens won't like it. And don't get nothing into political over there either. And respect people's space. Alright then, take care, be blessed. See you on the next video.